Good evening, I'm Ces Oreña-Drilon.
I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
The big stories tonight. The government says there's 2.5 billion pesos in fuel subsidy now ready for handing out to drivers and operators. Here come the questions though. When and how will the assistance be distributed? Will some get more than others? And will the temporary aid be enough to cushion the impact of still rising oil prices?
And in the Middle East, the ceasefire between Israel and Iran is not holding just yet, hours after declaration. It looks like the parties are not standing down until there is complete silence from both ends of the war.
And there's already a reply to Rodrigo Duterte's request for temporary freedom. The ICC Prosecutor's Office has cited several reasons why the former president should not be released from detention.
Kung ito ay walang magiging malinaw at konkretong tugon ng gobyerno, talagang hahantong tayo sa tigil pasada.
A bit of good news, although everything is still very uncertain. The reported ceasefire between Israel and Iran has resulted in a rollback in global oil prices. According to the Department of Energy, the price today went down to $69 per barrel. It's a best-case scenario for the DOE, although markets are still proceeding very cautiously. Just the same, Acting Secretary of the Energy Department, Shawn Yao, said government is ready to release fuel subsidies for the public transport sector as soon as oil hits $80 per barrel. They've also already listed down alternative routes and supplier nations such as the US, Canada, and Brazil if and when their so-called worst-case scenario happens.
There are several scenarios. One, the most positive is that it will not escalate anymore. It can escalate. The worst scenario is they close the Strait of Hormuz. If it gets cut off, then that's not only for the Philippines, bad news for the Philippines, but the whole world actually. So we've been discussing different scenarios from worst to best.
Today, gasoline stations implemented the first tranche of this week's price hikes, ranging from 1 peso and 75 centavos to almost 3 pesos a liter. The second tranche will be on Thursday, June 26. Transport Group Piston met the first day of price hikes with a protest rally. Once more, they insisted on the removal of VAT and excise tax on oil, to which the DOE answered that is a legislative matter.
Dapat ito'y masusing pag-aralan ng gobyerno, itong patuloy na panlilinglang ng mga malalaking kumpanya ng langis. Hangkong ito ay walang magiging malinaw at konkretong tugon ng gobyerno, talagang hahantong tayo sa tigil pasada, hindi lamang dito sa National Capital Region, kundi sa buong bansa.
I think 10 pesos yata yung excise, no? That would have a big impact. But the excise tax and the value-added tax, which is 12%, is imposed because of a law, no? Legislation yan eh. So hindi pwede na yung DOE can go against what is mandated by law, nor DOF, nor even the President. No? So kailangan talaga sundan kung anong nasa batas. Suspension, we have been researching, wala kasi sa batas yan eh. Ang ina-allow lang is to suspend the increase. Wala naman tayong ni-increase eh. But although however willing it is, the cabinet would be, pero hindi po kasi allowed by law, no? So it will have to be an act of Congress.
Meanwhile, in the Middle East, the scenario remains volatile. Hours into the ceasefire, Iran reportedly bombed Israel yet again. Tel Aviv is now accusing Tehran of violating the truce and vows retaliation. Mobile journalist Arles de los Santos has the report.
Following the directive of the political echelon, the ceasefire went into effect this morning.
This was Tel Aviv's military's confirmation after U.S. President Donald Trump announced a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu himself announced on social media that they have agreed to Trump's proposal for a truce. Still, Israel remains on high alert for possible air attacks. For its part, an Iranian official also confirmed agreeing to a ceasefire, but the country's foreign minister earlier said there will be no cessation of hostilities unless Israel stopped its assaults. In response, Trump has posted, "Please do not violate the ceasefire agreement." But just hours after the ceasefire's announcement, sirens were heard across Haifa, Israel. And later, explosions near Tel Aviv and Beersheba City. Israeli media said a building had been struck. 3 people were killed in the missile strike on the city. The attack left yet another trail of destruction, and rescue teams are searching for trapped people underneath the targeted residential building. In retaliation, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has ordered the military to strike Tehran for violating the ceasefire. Iran state television, however, denied the violation, saying they have already launched their final batch of missiles on Israel before the agreement. According to a nuclear expert, U.S. intervention in the matter had been necessary as it is becoming more apparent to them that Iran is definitely making bombs out of their nuclear stash.
So what the IAEA found just before they sort of made the declaration is they'd got 400 kilograms of 60% enriched. That would give you sort of 300 odd of 90% enriched for your bomb. You need about 25 kgs for a bomb. So they, potentially they had enough material for 10 bombs. What's not known is, have they converted the 400 kgs of 60%, which the IAEA saw, have they converted it to 90%? If they did, it's of the form of UF6.
The International Atomic Energy Agency has not been able to carry out inspections in Iran since Israel struck nuclear facilities there on June 13. On June 22, the United States dropped bunker-busting munition on Iranian nuclear facilities to try to eliminate sites, including the Fordo uranium enrichment plant dug into a mountain. Another issue would be the move of the Iranian parliament to close the Strait of Hormuz, a critical export route for oil producers such as Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Iraq, and Kuwait, which lies between Oman and Iran. The resolution, though, is still awaiting approval from the Supreme National Security Council. Mobile Journal Arles de los Santos. We are One News.
Another big story tonight, the Office of the Prosecutor asking the International Criminal Court to reject former President Rodrigo Duterte's request for interim release. In a 15-page redacted filing submitted on June 23, Deputy Prosecutor named Mandiaye Nyang cited repeated statements of Duterte, his family, and supporters against the legitimacy of ICC proceedings. For this reason, Nyang wrote, Digong's continued detention is necessary to make sure he is present during trial in The Hague. The former president was earlier quoted as saying arresting officers will have to kill him first before he could be brought to a foreign court. Then there's what the ICC deputy prosecutor described as physical acts of violence committed by Duterte's partner, Hanilet Avancenia. On video, she was seen hitting a police officer in the lead-up to Digong's arrest back on March 11.
The ICC prosecutor's office likewise brought up claims of Duterte's lawyers, supporters, and family that he was abducted by the Philippine government and the ICC. This defiance makes him a flight risk. Nyang reasoned, quote, a victim of kidnapping is unlikely to return to the custody of the kidnapper if given an opportunity to escape. Even Digong's daughter, Vice President Sara Duterte, was mentioned in the prosecutor's filing, from her impeachment to her supposedly plotting to kill President Bongbong Marcos, up to her and her siblings' political position and resources. Overall, ICC Deputy Prosecutor Nyang cited Mr. Duterte's history of interfering with investigations against him. Together with his family and associates, the former president is believed to be capable of influencing and even harming witnesses, and his release could put the legitimate interests of victims and witnesses at risk.
And now let's discuss this further with Attorney Cristina Conti, ICC Assistant to Counsel. Good evening to you, Attorney, and welcome to The Big Story. You must be heaving a big sigh of relief because this, when the defense had released its petition, you were taken aback.
Yes, certainly, because their submission seems to put that the prosecutor had already agreed with them and that there was already a country committed at least to host him during his interim release. It felt as if it was a done deal or something that is, in Filipino, we call it arreglado na. But now, thanks for the clarification from the Office of the Prosecutor, apparently, this was a bluff and the prosecutor has called it.
Can you cite it is heavily redacted and was just released hours ago. May you cite, it refers to some talks between the prosecution and the defense, precisely on where he can be taken. So may you cite this portion to us?
Yes, although I would not like also to fuel the speculations regarding the country, and I will put this out in advance that there is, earlier in the day, there were talks that Australia was being asked, or Australia was being explored as a possible host country or receiving country for President Duterte. But apparently, so here's the thing, the Office of the Prosecutor, initially, as the prosecutor also said, initially had talks with the Duterte camp about interim release, but only to a particular country. And this particular country, redacted, this particular country, the court has had experience with or a long-standing commitment and cooperation with. So this is a country probably that the court has already made the same request of, to host a detainee, to hold them temporarily while during interim release. And now it appears, so there were initial talks, but they did not finalize anything. And now the prosecution says the defense has gone ahead and even changed the country in its application. And it's saying, which is true, we cannot comment or we cannot commit to any proposal if it is not yet on paper. And the only time it was on paper was during the defense filing. As it turns out, the prosecution was, in a way, caught blindsided when the defense says, oh yeah, we already agreed. But it turns out the defense changed the country. And the prosecution is vehemently against transfer to that particular country because it appears there is no history of transactions with this country as to detainees. And
but there was an initial agreement. There was an initial agreement as to a particular country. Talks.
Yeah, I would put it more like that. And I'm even thinking that it could have been an offhand discussion. I mean, you talk about, how about interim release? Are you okay with that? Maybe the prosecutor said, well, before we had the interim release of this and that to this country. Maybe just that. And I don't know. It appears that even the defense team, the legal team, has had this proclivity for disinformation. And that's pretty sad because apparently from that side of the fence, then now, who do we trust?
Will you have an opportunity to weigh in as well in this request of interim release by the defendant?
Yes, although technically we have not yet been ordered or been asked to comment as victims, as is usual with the Office of the Prosecutor. They will, with the pretrial chamber, they will order parties to comment. The Office of the Public Counsel for Victims, which stands now as the sort of temporary representative for victims, while the legal representatives have not yet been appointed. The OPCV has committed to submit representations in behalf of victims. We are coordinating with the OPCV for the submission of the views and concerns of victims.
So masaya ka ba sa sagot ng prosecution?
Sa isang
Prosecutor
banda,
rather.
oo. O, sa isang banda, oo. Pero syempre, nakaka-alarma pa rin na parang initially, may pag-uusap. Doon kami na na paisip na bakit may ganitong usapan na tungkol sa interim release. But on the whole, the document actually points to so many reasons not to grant him interim release as a matter of principle. And I put in, so you've mentioned already yung appearance niya, and then he questions the legitimacy of the court. His appearance might not be kumbaga ensured at the next hearing, and then yung obstruction or endangering witnesses. There's a third, the third point is very parang mapapaisip ka, no? O nga, no? It's very chilling because it cites Duterte saying that as soon as he is elected mayor of Davao, he will double the killings in Davao. So parang, ha? And the prosecution says, well, and then the defense says, tingnan nyo, wala namang namamatay. Sabi ng prosecution, oo, kasi nakakulong siya. And kumbaga, with a view that if Duterte is released and assumes office as mayor, then maybe he will be true to his word to double the killings there.
At which point, Attorney Conti, do you think nahihingan kayo to weigh in on this case in terms of you being, or the office of representing the victims? At some point soon?
Yes. Actually, to be frank, we have initial and internal deadlines. It's this week. We're just waiting for official communications from the OPCV about this submission.
So ready na yung dokumento, hinantay nyo na lang nahingin, and then you'll just send it?
Yes po. Sa part naman namin, kasi hindi naman, again, we're not the prosecutor 2.0. So itong mga argumento ng prosecutor, hindi naman namin kailangan ng ulit-ulitin pa. Ang mas importante dito, ano yung pananaw ng mga biktima. At para sa kanila, talaga namang nakakatakot ang paglaya niya at may potensyal na paatras yung ibang gusto pang magtestigo laban sa kanya. Very material yun, lalo na dito sa panahon na, kasi nasa ano pa lang tayo wala pang kumbaga kaso talaga, wala pang charges. The charges will be read in September. And so technically, the prosecutor can really still build up the case. And the deadline for disclosure of evidence is in 6-7 days. On July 1st. That's the deadline for the general disclosure of evidence. And then the charges. Ang tawag natin sa Pilipinas yung information, kumbaga, itong araw na ito, ikaw ay nagkasala. The charges are due to be released on July 4th. So we're eagerly awaiting that to see if all this have had any impact.
Would it be
will that be heavily redacted too?
Possibly because on the part of witnesses and perhaps incidents. So anything, nagre-redact kasi sila ng kung ano man na palagay nila makakakompromiso nung seguridad ng tao. Dito actually sa redactions dito, seguridad ito nung kapamilya at mga posibleng mga kilala ni Duterte na pupuntahan So, hindi ko muna i-disclose kung siya pupunta. And then pangalawa, dun sa mga witnesses. Kaya dito, dahil hindi pa naman sigurado, kung ano man, hindi muna nila ipapaalam. Sa bahagi ng information, palagay ko sigurado sila sa kung anong krimen. Yung mga pangalan lang siguro ng pinatay, ng mga witnesses na nakakita, yun ang posibleng i-redact dito.
In terms of chronology, Attorney, do you expect na hihingan muna kayo ng yung weighing in your imposition ng victims about this possible interim release bago lumabas yung information, yung presentation of charges, etc., which means dapat next week na, diba?
Well, yeah, iniisip nga na, actually this week nga yung internal deadline namin na pag-uusap namin sa OPCV. I guess they're going to also submit this week. The thing is, if you look at the technicalities, if you look at the rules, the court is not required to ask for the views and concerns of victims. Kumbaga, hindi absolutely required. We were required in the question of jurisdiction. So, dito sa jurisdiction, anong views and concerns? We've already submitted that. Pero for interim release, the issue is about security and about the prosecution and the defense. Sila yung talagang, kumbaga, magkausap dyan. You know what? We're waiting for, usually the court sends out an order, di ba, na, okay, these are the deadlines for the submissions. The court did not because, unfortunate for Duterte, I don't know if they figured this out, the judges of the ICC had their annual retreat right after they filed, the defense filed. They were in Germany for a good part of last week. So, napaisip nga kami na anong nangyari, bakit hindi nag-order yung judges? Yung pala, talagang may annual na
Nagbakasyon din sila. Kumbaga.
Oh, actually, it's not a vacation in the sense na parang enjoy. All together, meron silang annual retreat sa Nuremberg. Ito yung seat ng unang
Kung saan yung
Nuremberg trial.
trials. War
Yes,
trials.
Wow.
So, hindi siya bakasyon, kumbaga. It was also
parang
a learning.
internalization of their task, I would
Correct.
suppose.
And in
The
their
heavy
press
tasks
statement,
ahead of them. Yeah.
yes, and in their press statement after their retreat, they were mentioning that, now that we have re-imbibed and we are reinvigorated with the spirit of the Nuremberg trials, we will proceed henceforth with our work in the ICC.
Per attorney, going back to the interim release, how do you think the court will weigh the reasons cited by the prosecution, which really centered around Mr. Duterte being a flight risk, kumpara doon sa mga rason naman ng defense, which cited yung humanitarian grounds, yung edad po niya, yung health niya. So kumbaga, ano po yung maging mas matimbang?
I would say the ICC will decide on una jurisprudence, what it has already, una yung batas. So it's the Rome Statute, and both the prosecution and the defense refer to articles. So doon nakalagay kasi yung parameters kung kailan papayagan yan. And then secondly, sa jurisprudence. And jurisprudence is parang the history of how the court has interpreted the law, these articles. And so there were several mentions of in these cases, in a previous application, ganito yung ginawa namin. Dito din ma-apply. And for me, having looked through the information available, it weighs against the Dutertes kasi hindi pinapayagan ng interim release sa ICC for those accused of crimes against humanity, war crimes, etc. Yung pinayagan lang so far ng ICC ay yung ang kaso ay parang obstruction of justice kung tatawagin, Article 70. Kaya mabigat, walang precedent, and from what we say, diba, parang walang nauna, first time ito kung sakali. And then second, as to, you mentioned na parang humanitarian and parang medical, heavily redacted yung part na yan. Hirap nga kami, parang ano bang naintindihan? Pero it would appear that even the prosecutor is not convinced. And if the prosecutor is not convinced that whatever condition, medical or kung ano man yan, is kumbaga requires that he be let out of prison, then unlikely that the court will also be convinced.
All right. It's been just a few hours, but I'm sure you've talked to the families of victims, and how has their attitude been to this new bit of information?
Nagka-messagean kami, and para sa kanya, thank you Lord.
Kasi nagduda kayo nung una, no? Medyo kinabahan kayo.
And in fact, at one point, I really thought it would be about 50-50 because if you have all the elements present, the prosecution agreeing and a country volunteering to host him, then parang baka pumayag yung court kasi ariglado na. But for the victims, thank you Lord lang, nagpapasalamat sila because from their point of view, the release of Duterte in any way, shape, or form is certainly, kumbaga, it forebodes additional deaths, killings, and hark back to the killings that they've experienced. It's re-traumatization. And on their part, as victims, who could also be qualified as witnesses, it's disincentive for them to come forward if the accused is outside and can freely mingle with his associates. The word associates is heavily mentioned also in one portion of this document. Kaya napaisip ako na talagang ano yun, material for the ICC that an accused is not allowed to, kumbaga, reignite the passions of his supporters or of his team, yung parang yung mga co-conspirators niya or co-perpetrators. So we're just a little bit concerned because the prosecutor appears to agree in principle na doon sa isang bansa. But then on the whole, we think this request, we're more positive now that this request will not be granted. And anyway, it's just 3 more months.
Thank you so much for your time. Attorney Cristina Conti, ICC Assistant to Counsel.
We're just going to take a quick break, but coming up is Vice President Sara Duterte's impeachment trial still on track as delays and finger-pointing continue between the 2 chambers of Congress. We'll have a conversation with the spokesperson of House Prosecutors, Attorney Odi Bukoy, when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
You're watching The Big Story here on One News. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. reiterated his directive for law enforcers to intensify the campaign against illegal drugs. But in an apparent swipe at his predecessor, the chief executive said this campaign should be peaceful and bloodless. Marcos said his administration's approach to the war on drugs is already yielding good results. The latest is the nearly 9 billion pesos worth of shabu discovered by fishermen floating in the waters off the provinces of Zambales, Pangasinan, Ilocos Norte, Ilocos Sur, and Cagayan. This is one of the country's largest drug seizures and has added to the administration's 63 billion peso drug haul in the last 3 years. The confiscated drugs are set to be destroyed in a facility in Capas, Tarlac. The president has instructed the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency to immediately destroy the illegal drugs to prevent it from returning to the streets.
It has been described as a bloodless war on drugs, and that is what we are aiming for. But nonetheless, despite the fact that we do not kill people that are just suspected of having anything to do with drugs, imbis na ganyan ang ginagawa natin, we are handling the drug problem in a different way.
Vice President Sara Duterte has submitted her reply to the summons sent to her by the Senate Impeachment Court. The House prosecution panel was also furnished copies of the reply. Its spokesperson says Duterte's reply was not the bloodbath that they were expecting. And joining us tonight is none other than the House panel spokesperson Antonio Bukoy to share with us his other thoughts on the Vice President's plea. Good evening and welcome to The Big Story, Attorney.
Good evening, and thank you for the invitation.
We understand that you just finished a meeting. Do we assume that it's the House prosecution panel?
Yes, there's a meeting with the House prosecution panel.
So do you have news for us?
Oh, yes. First, we are filing a manifestation tomorrow relating to the entry of appearance ad cautelam and a resubmission of the entry of appearance made by the public prosecutor. And second, we're going to file a submission submitting to the impeachment court the compliance with the first requirement that they imposed, which is the certification that the House complied with the constitutional requirements when they filed the impeachment complaint.
All right. So once again, 2 things, a manifestation, and second, the compliance with the first request of the Senate Impeachment Court.
Impeachment.
Right.
That is correct.
But part of the reply of the Vice President was that there was no impeachment complaint to begin with because it was remanded to the House. What will be your comment to that? Will that be part of your manifestation?
No, that would be appropriate for the reply that we will file.
Which will
It will be which will be filed on Friday.
Okay. May we go back to the manifestation? What are the contents of that manifestation to be filed tomorrow?
Okay, the manifestation will consist of a challenge to the defense in relation to their entry of appearance ad cautelam and a resubmission of the entry of appearance of the public prosecutor. Why resubmission?
Okay.
A point was raised that the entry of appearance of the public prosecutors were made before the impeachment court was convened. So we're willing to refile it, just so that we can dispense with this preliminary. But again, the second subject matter would be in reference to the entry of appearance ad cautelam. Because to us, if you say entry of appearance ad cautelam, you do not recognize the jurisdiction of the impeachment court. So we're going to address those two issues.
Is that standard, Attorney Bukoy? I mean, I know it means literally with caution, but can we really just assume that they don't, recognize the jurisdiction of the impeachment court?
Because the ad cautelam does not exist in the rules of court. The closest to an ad cautelam pleading is a special appearance. Now, when you make a special appearance on behalf of a client, you question the jurisdiction of the court. But you have to state the reason why you are questioning or challenging the jurisdiction of the court. In the case of the entry of ad cautelam filed by the defense, they did not provide any reason why it is ad cautelam. So they must explain why it is ad cautelam.
Sayang, you're breaking up. But anyway, why did the panel see this as necessary to be filed tomorrow before your answer on Friday? Because you want to get this technicality out of the way?
That's correct. We want to call the attention of the impeachment court that they are filing pleadings, they're availing of pleas, yet they have not recognized the authority or jurisdiction of the court.
So this is, you see it as an urgent thing that you have to clarify to the impeachment court?
Yes. It is with urgency that we have to bring this to the attention of the impeachment court.
Well, Attorney, the impeachment court, or rather the prosecution panel, does have 5 days to respond to VP Sara's ad cautelam entry. But you guys are submitting your answer on Friday instead of Monday, ano? Does that mean that the impeachment or the prosecution panel is really keen on fast-tracking this impeachment process?
We have been keen since February 5. We've been waiting for this. Now that they have filed the answer, we want to move this forward.
And this ad cautelam entry done by the Vice President means that this process is still in motion.
That is, we will put that on the table. We will leave it now to the impeachment court to determine how to treat that.
Clarification lang rin, Attorney, no? This request na yung first request of the Senate Impeachment Court, yung to validate na you did not violate the Constitution. Why did you have to wait for tomorrow pa if you see urgency in responding tomorrow to the Vice President's answers?
No, you're referring to two matters. One is the certification.
Yes.
Okay? The first matter. No, because we had to weigh our options. We had to determine what the repercussions were. Now, we have weighed into this and we have determined that we cannot move this forward and let this issue be a hindrance or a delay to moving this process forward. So we have decided, we'll come to an agreement that, okay, let's just comply so we can move this forward.
Right, but how can it move forward? Go ahead.
With respect to the second requirement, we're prepared to comply, but we have to wait until the 20th Congress.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. How can it move forward when it's, I guess, physically impossible to comply with the second requirement?
Impossible to comply right now. But the first thing that we will request the House is to satisfy or comply with the second requirement, which is a declaration or affirmation that the 20th Congress is pursuing the impeachment complaint.
All right. Now, in your briefing earlier, you seem to be quite disappointed with the Vice President's reply to the summons.
Yes. Because the Vice President could not extricate herself from ordinary rules of procedure instead of addressing the substance of the impeachment complaint.
So isn't that normal though, Attorney? I mean, lawyers would usually try to do that as a first effort, right?
It's an option for them, Attorney.
Not in the case of impeachment. This is accountability. She said she wants to clear her name. But by doing this, she's not opening the path to clearing her name. She's resorting to procedural technicalities instead of addressing the factual allegations in the charges. So I'm disappointed. She wants a bloodbath. We don't have a bloodbath with this kind of an answer. However, on the part of the prosecution, once the trial starts, we will make up the evidence. Now, it's up to the Vice President to contribute this.
So, Attorney, is it fair to say that this is a deliberate diversionary and delaying tactic on the part of the Vice President and her defense team?
It's diversionary.
And what will happen? I mean, we do understand you're not taking your full 5 days to file your reply, the non-extendable 5 days. But if you do file by Friday, which is June 27, 28, 29, 30, will be the Monday, and you know the mandate of the 19th Congress will end. What do you hope that this early submissions will, garner the prosecution?
We don't have to wait until the 20th Congress to file the reply because we have a deadline. We have to file this within 5 days from receipt of the answer. So the answer, the reply actually falls due on Saturday. But if we're ready to file it on Friday, we might as well file it.
Okay, Attorney, since galing kayo sa mahabang meeting ng panel, may you give us a taste of how the panel will be replying? What will be the major gist?
I don't want to preempt this. Let's just wait for the reply.
But okay, if you say na kulang sa, di ba, the Vice President promised bombast, like a bloodbath, and then you saw the answer na puro procedural, will you go to the meat? Without preempting the panel, Attorney, just give us the general trend of the thinking of the panel.
We will address the issues that were raised. Issues of jurisdiction, issues of non-compliance with the one-year bar rule,
Okay. So those arguments that we've been listening to time and time again, the usual, did you violate the Constitution?
Yes. If you will recall, these are the same issues that they raised in the petition before the Supreme Court, where they sought an injunction against the impeachment complaint proceedings. These are also the same grounds that were echoed by Senator De La Rosa when he spoke on the floor as a judge when he moved to dismiss the articles of impeachment. This is nothing new, but we want now to make this off record.
Right.
There's nothing in the impeachment court now that explains this on record. So we want to put this on record.
Okay. Now, on the returned articles of impeachment, how would you now address this technicality pointed out by the VP in her reply na they don't even exist?
That's wrong. The articles of impeachment exist because it stands before the impeachment court. No less than the impeachment court said that this is not a dismissal. This is just a return.
Okay.
Yeah,
now,
they were very
the articles of impeachment were also attached to the summons. She was able to respond to the articles because it was a fact. The impeachment articles are very much alike. There's no issue about that.
So, parang you find that a flimsy argument?
It is flimsy, it's absurd.
Okay. All right.
And it is a legal impossibility. What she's saying is a legal impossibility.
Okay. And the manifestation tomorrow, attorney, as a last question, is this going to be released via paper submission? Is it going to be via press con?
It is going to be submitted by paper submission. I don't think we need a press con for that.
So no press con tomorrow from you?
Wala po. Wala po.
And attorney, one final question for me. You did say that the House panel plans to challenge the defense entry of appearance ad cautelam. What does that exactly mean, attorney? If you can help break that down for us.
The defense, the appearance ad cautelam is an introduction of the defense lawyers, informing the court and the adverse counsel that these are the lawyers who are going to represent the vice president. It's ad cautelam. However, it's ad cautelam. Like I said, they enter their appearance without recognizing the authority of the court, nor submitting to the jurisdiction of the court. So we're putting that on the table. We're raising that issue before the impeachment court.
So does that mean, attorney, you are challenging the appearance of the defense or yung pag-qualify nila ng ad cautelam or with caution?
We're calling them on their ad cautelam entry. They're labeling or they're characterizing their entry to be ad cautelam, meaning for caution. You enter your appearance, you make it categorical.
Okay. So yung last question na lang talaga, totoo na to, attorney. Kasi na-defer. Sige, from me. Tapos after yung na-defer kasi, di ba, yung pagtanggap nung ni-remand, ni-return, yung articles of impeachment, anong magyayari doon? Hantayin na natin yung next Congress or?
No, yung defer ng pagtanggap, hindi yung articles of impeachment, yung return of the articles ang dinefer. There was a resolution, there was a motion that was passed by the 19th Congress. Yeah. That is now water under the bridge. Kasi we will already address the requirement in that for the return. We're complying with the requirement. So that's water under the bridge. It's no longer, it's a non-issue anymore.
Okay. Are you sure? Baka ma-technical kayo dyan.
Hindi. We just want to move this forward.
Okay. My last question, attorney, is this.
Go ahead.
You know, marami kayong abogado dyan sa House panel, both, congressmen and private prosecutors. Are you in unison? Nag-agree ba unanimous dito sa strategy ninyo sa pagsagot pa lang na ibibigay nyo on Friday and the manifestation tomorrow?
That's the collective decision.
Okay. Do you want to elaborate?
All right. Okay.
All right. Well, we thank you for talking to us here on the Big Story. Next time, sana po Zoom, but we understand you just finished the meeting and mainit-init pa yung binalita nyo sa amin. Maraming salamat. House Panel Spokesperson, Antonio Bucoy.
Okay, we're going to pause for another quick break, but right after that, it is the domino effect authorities are afraid of. The rising cost of fuel could just cause prices of basic goods to shoot up as well. The details when the Big Story returns. Keep it here.
Welcome back to the big story. The number of Filipinos seeking to be repatriated from Iran and Israel has climbed to 331. 31 of them are set to return to the Philippines Tuesday evening with migrant workers Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak. Their initial flight was delayed due to the temporary closure of Qatari airspace after Iran's strike on a U.S. base in the country. In a Facebook post, Kakdak shared the group was able to catch a flight this morning once airspace reopened. The group of OFWs make up 26 from Israel, 3 from Jordan, 1 from Palestine, and 1 from Qatar. In a video message, President Bongbong Marcos has ordered concerned agencies to ensure the safe return of the Filipinos. He also shared that the DFA has raised Alert Level 3 in Israel and Iran, which calls for voluntary repatriation. Marcos Jr. said that repatriates will receive 150,000 pesos in aid, housing, transport, and livelihood support.
I urge our fellow Filipinos to coordinate with our embassies in Tel Aviv and in Tehran. Please follow their guidance, inform them of your situation, and do not hesitate to ask for assistance.
And fuel prices are still rising, but it's not only that which the public should be worried about. Basic goods could be more expensive as well. Philippine Amalgamated Supermarkets Association President Stephen Kua warns that higher fuel prices will likely impact the production and distribution of goods. Today, the Confederation of Truckers Association of the Philippines said they are considering increasing delivery charges. And Kua says manufacturers will also adjust production costs if this pushes through.
Yung trucking industry, ang number one expense in the operation is the petroleum products. So if ever talagang matutuluyan at it will be finalized na mag-i-implement ng ganyang increase, of course, hindi lang naman yung fuel prices ay yung petroleum products ang maapektuhan in our operation. Kahit yung mga kaliit-liitang spare parts.
There are lots of fuel involved in production. So hindi lang sa distribution pero especially distribution, that's natural, ginagamit mga trucks for delivery, di ba? So be it for food, non-food, palengke man, other food retail outlets, other formats.
Moving on to other news, the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao Chief Minister Abdul Rauf Makakua has ordered all ministers, deputy ministers, and heads of agencies and offices to submit their unqualified courtesy resignations by June 30 or be deemed resigned. Makakua said serious complaints have been made against regional offices and the move was done to improve government efficiency. 2 BARMM offices face anonymous allegations of irregular transactions worth 2.5 billion pesos, claims that both ministers have denied. The move is similar to President Marcos's post-election cabinet shakeup and comes ahead of the BARMM's first parliamentary elections come October. Despite this directive, officials must continue routine work but without exercising discretion.
And after all the hard news the past hour, let's end the show on a fun and literally refreshing note. Our big picture tonight is Filipinos marking the feast of St. John the Baptist with buckets and glass of water. Over in San Juan City, the Wata Wata Festival drew crowds to a kilometer-long basaan zone along Pinaglabanan Road from P. Guevara to N. Domingo. Water throwing was only from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m., a tweak in the guideline after last year's chaos. Meanwhile, in Cavite City, they celebrated the Regada Water Festival along P. Burgos Avenue. Locals and visitors splashed water in honor of St. John the Baptist. And finally, over in Dinalupihan, Bataan, thousands celebrated the Kuraldal or religious celebration ritual during their own Tubig Festival. Around 15 fire trucks participated in the festivity. The long-standing tradition of dousing people in water during this feast symbolizes cleansing, renewal, and baptism, and it also commemorates Jesus' baptism by St. John.
So
You're from San Juan.
Yes.
Did you?
Yeah.
No, but I did.
Not today?
Hindi siya umaabot dun sa ano namin, nasa gilid na kasi ako ng Mandaluyong and San Juan. But I do remember last year medyo may mga bad occurrences that happened.
Yes.
May nagtapon ng parang chemicals and it hurt some. So I'm glad that didn't happen this year.
All right. right, and that's it for the Big Story this Tuesday evening. Thank you so much for watching the Big Story.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
We're back here tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. We'll see you then. Have a good night, everyone.